All right, welcome back to the new SEC podcast. We got Georgia going to Mississippi State, noon, ESPN game. If you got YouTube TV, maybe they'll figure it out by then. If not, you got to find a place to watch this game. The line's opened. Georgia's 9.5 favorites, has moved to 7.5. Mississippi State has been playing some covering football. They've been really close in almost every game that they've played. Georgia's not overlooking this game. I'll tell you that much. Georgia knows that this is a team that could put them potentially on upset alert. Georgia right now, though, wants a shot at Atlanta. They're going to get a shot at the playoffs, most likely.
Yeah.
They have SEC title hopes, championship hopes. This is just one more step in the way. Georgia, Mississippi State. Randall, what do you think?
I got a lot of thoughts here. I mean, if you're, a very avid Georgia follower and you watched the game last year, you saw Mississippi State was kind of able to put some points up on this defense. I know some of the guys on this defense have now made it to the league. A lot of guys are back. KJ Bolden's back. They got Alice Robinson at corner. Looking at this opponent for Georgia and what they're up against, Mississippi State has been playing some really good high-scoring football. It hasn't always translated to wins, but it did this past week, and so I wouldn't sleep on this team.
No, and you can't. There's a couple things that they can do really well. The defense has had problems at times giving up high-scoring matchups. They're getting 1.3 picks per game. It's 18th in the country, second in the SEC. They're getting turnovers. They're scoring almost 30 points a game. They're vastly improved, and they're playing exactly to the level of competition that they're playing against. If you watched our power rankings, we're talking about this team, and they're 3 plays away from being 8-1. The 2 games in overtime, the horrible interception in the Florida game. I know they're losses. They count as losses when, at the end of the day, no asterisk beside them. But you can't help but think that maybe this team could have put themselves in a better spot in some of those games, and the talent is there.
The talent's definitely there, and they're outplaying the expectations. And expectations are nothing but what other people think about what you're going to do. And Mississippi State obviously has been showing up this season. 3-point game against Tennessee, beat Arkansas. They were down in that game, and Arkansas seemed like they were going to win that game. From what I watched for a while there, Arkansas has found new ways to lose games that I didn't even know were possible. But for Mississippi State, they, having a 17-point lead on Texas, who turns around the next week, I was at the game yesterday in Austin and pretty much throttles Vanderbilt, a top 9 team for 3 quarters. This Mississippi State team is not getting enough love in the press for what they have been able to do to opponents this season and how they've played in games.
Yeah. And right now they are one of the best teams you can bet on in the country. I mentioned this in the power rankings. Second best team in the country to bet on the money line. And a couple of these,
right.
A couple of these, I was waiting for one to hit. I got it last week. I might do it this week. Who knows?
Right.
But I do think that just at a high level, they're like I said, they're playing to the level of competition. Yep. Where Georgia now sits in this game is having really good running backs, and that's been something that can challenge Mississippi State. Is a really good running game, and Georgia has now developed that. It was a little bit slower start last week against Florida that turned on later, but the running back play for Georgia has started to really improve.
It has, and they have that wild card who wears number 14 as well. So you got Nate Frazier, you obviously got your other running backs, you got Cass Jones, and you got 14 who adds, the most running we've seen since Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck wasn't really too much of a mobile quarterback. It didn't display that skill set. Some would argue some skill sets he's displayed have looked a little lackluster of late. Unnecessary Carson Beck dig. But, when you talk about the running game for Georgia, that's been their identity, right? Top 6 in the SEC when it comes to rushing yards per game. Mississippi State, they got gashed up by Tennessee, got kind of gashed up by Mike Washington in Arkansas this past game. If it's a shootout, Georgia, that's not normally been their identity to win those type of games, but they've proven they can. Tennessee. And they've also Tennessee, right? They've also proven that they can make stops when it matters. And so I think that's going to be some of the keys to this game. I think about how Georgia could win this one.
Yeah. And one of the things that I want to see more from Georgia in this game, I've mentioned it week in and week out, is they're struggling so hard to have that Georgia identity of getting pressure on a quarterback. Like the pass rush was so solid. They had, dogs back there that were able to make plays, contain, not let guys get out. Blake
Yeah,
Shapen's a
Mikael
guy.
Williams, Carter from last season
Yeah.
too, as well. So
Yeah. And Blake Shapen's a guy who, if you can get some pressure on him, you can force a turnover. You can force some mistakes. You can force 3-and-outs. Georgia right now, 132nd of 136 teams in sacks per game, 0.7 sacks per game. That's not the Georgia team that I know.
yeah,
It's not the Georgia team. And you're going to have to get pressure in this game if you don't want to find yourself in potentially a shootout. You got Anthony Evans III, Georgia transfer now at Mississippi State, had a great game last week, 5 for 11, 2 touchdowns. He's going to want to beat his former team. These DBs for Georgia have shown that some guys can get in behind him. We saw it last week. He's going to want to have a big game, but if you put pressure on the quarterback, you stop all that from happening. So I want to see that from Georgia this week for them to win.
The pressure is going to be crucial, and it's come a lot from the linebacker position, right? The Chris Coles, the CJ Allens, like they've been able to make those key turnovers. You saw CJ Allen make a big turnover against Kentucky. This isn't Kentucky, but all American type guy, first, second round type guy, and he's going to have to get some pressure on Blake Shapen, like you said, and disrupt kind of this go offense they have with Devon Booth and with Thompson and with these other receivers. Where if you let them hang in the game, they're going to treat it like another game. Like they have not looked scared playing anybody, and they shouldn't. But like they weren't worried about the number next to Tennessee. They weren't worried about the number next to Arizona State. Like they've just shown up and been like, okay, we're playing Texas at home.
Yeah.
All right, this is our crib. And so in this game it's in
Starkville.
Yeah. Starkville. So that's another factor that could make it a little bit spooky.
It could. And a lot of Mississippi State talk here, for Georgia's credit and benefit, and where I think the game got closer last week, that I think will be a huge improvement to this week, is Georgia has incredible tight ends. They got underutilized last week. They were targeted a lot, just, didn't necessarily connect there. I think for Georgia, you bring the tight ends back into play in this game. It's one of your biggest assets as a team here. You got so many of them, and they're all top-notch tight ends. Get them back involved. You're going to want to move the ball super effectively. You can't have your drives fizzle out kind of like they did at times in the Florida games, in the Florida game. Get the running backs involved. To that point, though, there's susceptibility on Georgia's defense for Mississippi State to be able to move the ball as well. I see this going a little bit back and forth. The home field advantage plays a little bit, but I do see this being a back and forth game. To me, I see Georgia ultimately winning. But with how Mississippi State's covering spreads right now, I'd be remiss to pick them to not cover again. I mean, they're 7-1 against the spread.
Yeah, the 7.5 point spread is something, right? And we really appreciate all the Georgia fans that have been tuning in. I know you watched our preview last week with Davin Bellamy, former Georgia Dog, and we've been pretty high on Georgia. They're winning their games. They're doing a lot of things right, and this game, based upon how I've seen Mississippi State play against opponents, it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be the A&M profile, where it's a close kind of defensive battle, and then the team kind of A&M ultimately kind of took a bigger lead. And maybe in this case, like it kind of plays like the Georgia-Florida game, where you're kind of going back and forth. It's low scoring, and then Georgia in the fourth quarter gets that second touchdown, that third touchdown, and then their defense just steps up and they wear you down. That's what they do best. Again, if you listen to our previews, they wear you down. Or it's a shootout where both teams are playing to their strengths. Mississippi State's playing to their offensive strengths. And Georgia's playing to the weaknesses of Mississippi State, that rushing defense and their ability to stop offenses from progressing and scoring. If it's a shootout, I'm picking Kirby. If it's a defensive battle, I'm picking Kirby. But I do like Mississippi State to cover. So I'm going to say 28-21. I think the spread's 7.5. I think this is a pretty close game for most of the game, but Georgia has enough to win it out.
Yeah, I got a 30-26, Georgia winning, Mississippi State keeping it close. I'll probably have a bet here on Mississippi State to cover, just because, I to win outright, maybe a money line in a parlay here. If you're a Georgia fan, this is kind of a good time slot for you. You get it at noon. If you get in, you get out, you win the game. You can start rooting for Mizzou at 3:30 to beat A&M. You can start and you can start rooting for LSU at 7:30 to beat Alabama, putting you back into contention for being in the SEC championship game. Georgia not in the driver's seat for that game, definitely in the driver's seat for a playoff run, potentially taking one of the top 4 spots if things shake up. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens in this game. Georgia fans, Mississippi State fans, love these two teams. Love talking about it. We do previews every week. We do recaps. Check out our power rankings that we just posted from last week. And We appreciate you being here. Hit that like button, subscribe button for more content like this. This is the new SEC podcast. I'm Hunter Ziesman, joined by Randall Ledet Jr. And until next time.